my session, I want to spend a little bit of time really diving into what was mentioned a couple of times. What is normal? I'm going to start with kind of a, I don't know, weird example. You know, what is normal when it comes to measurements, right? Everybody's got a different view of normal, right? The most of the world is on the metric system, but you know, as you can see, there's a big red thing in the middle of that screen to the right. The U.S. is mainly not metric, but yet, you know, we have a few things. You know, we talk about normal for us is we still buy gallons of milk. I still buy a gallon of gasoline. But one of the things that's really interesting, because in the U.S., right, I might drive a mile, but if I go buy Coke, I haven't bought a gallon of Coke or a quart of Coke in 30 years, actually 40 years. It's been ages and ages. We've been a 2-liter bottle. That's how it's referred to. So we are normal. Are we? Right? This is actually the track and football field at my son's high school. And that's been something that has been also going on for the last 40 years. It's not a 400-yard track. We don't run the 100-meter dash or the 100-yard dash. We run meters, right? When you do track and field events, everything's in meters. If you go and run a cross-country event, it's in kilometers. So, you know, we have a few things that have kind of moved to the world of normal. Well, for IBMI, right, we've been on a continual path towards normal for the last, really, probably the last 12 years or so. We've been really pushing on this path. And, you know, like many on this path, some have truly adopted normal practices, and some have adopted bits and pieces of normal. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time kind of diving into a little bit about what do we consider normal? What is our strategy from the operating system? And my role is I'm the architect for application development. So this is something that, you know, I've been working on with our teams here for the last, you know, 10, 12 years now. Moving and heading to move development for IBMI and making it basically the same as anywhere else that you might do development. So some of the different thoughts or key words that are important when we think about normal, right? I want our development to be open. I wanted to be able to leverage open technologies, the open methodologies that are part of the open community. I want to make certain that those concepts are every bit as available on IBMI as they would be on any other platform. But yeah, sure, there might be occasionally some differences in how they have to be done on I, but the core reality is, you know, we are talking about, you know, all sorts of open technologies, methodologies, and all of those are part of what we do on I. Flexibility. We, for so many years, our methodologies for writing code were so inflexible. We needed to really hit that head on and make a change. Let people know you can do flexible development on IBMI and do it with both open languages and also your more core languages like RPG, COBOL. We want to make certain that our development is relevant, meaning that, you know, what's going on any other community, right, is just as important on IBMI, and we have ways that we can do that and do it well. Perfect example, you know, Mark was just talking about, you know, something I'm excited to hear, you know, and I'll spend a couple seconds talking about what we've been doing with it as well, just from an OS perspective, but Ansible and our integration with Ansible. That is relevant. That's what people are doing now. And we needed to be able to make certain that we could do that today with our applications as well as our infrastructure. Continuing to be agile. So important to be able to respond to the needs of the business and be able to do it in a quick manner. Now, the one last bullet that I think is so important, and it's really one of the things that is often left out of the conversation when we talk about normal development on all of the other platforms, all of the other languages that we might be thinking of, and that's really the investment protection. If you think about open source languages in general, or other than your more like core languages like RPG, COBOL, even sometimes C++ isn't as much as we'd like it to be from a industry perspective, but the ability to protect your investment in your applications. I know we've been doing this a long time on IBMI, but you think about the code that you all wrote back in the days of the AS400, right? All of that code, while it may have been monolithic and waterfall and based upon the punch card, if you will, as the stylistic RPG, all that code runs today. Runs on your Power 9 processor with the latest 7.4 release. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? I can think about that from both sides of that conversation. And as we've progressed with our system, right, in around the 2000s, we really kind of set some of the foundations for where we are today. And you think we're roughly the I series in and around this time frame. We added things like Java. We started to add, other web containers like WebSphere. IBM had some, great solutions that were going to cure world hunger and a few other things like EGL and HATS. But the core things that we added, you can see down there at the very bottom of that list. In and around those years, we changed the RPG programming language to make it ILE based, and that was a major architectural step towards really allowing us to be flexible and modern, being able to leverage that sort of technology, and then being able to change from our other database access methodology to something like SQL. And the work that we've done starting in that point in that era has been huge as we've moved into the new modern IBMI world. Hard to believe. I know many of our customers still call our platform AS400 or I series. Many of our customers, while they're not technically correct, they probably are a little bit correct in the respect that many are still using the system as if it was from that era. I was talking with a customer just this week where, they are still running OPM COBOL. So they are truly an AS400. Even though they're running on Power 9 and they're running on 7.3, they're really AS400. They haven't done any of this normal modernization things. And if you look at what IBMI is, hard to believe it's been 12 years now that we've been IBMI, but this is where we really started to ramp up and push this roadmap towards continuing to focus on normal, leveraging the latest open source technologies, leveraging the latest information on how you do source control, how you manage source, how you deploy source, all sorts of things of that nature. This is a module, agile, self-documenting, microservices-oriented application architecture is there if you choose, of course, to take advantage of it. So really, we've really changed in the conversation. Of course, like anything with the world of IBMI, you have a choice. It's not like, we've moved in this direction and we've cut off and drawn a big, huge line in the sand that says, well, anything before that you did prior to 1997 is never going to work again. This is one of those, the next slide, this is one of I don't know, the craziest things I've ever seen. One of the craziest things that we still do with this silly platform is the fact that on a Power 9 system, on 7.4, you can still run code from your System 36. That code was written, back in some cases, the early 80s. And it still works today, unchanged. Crazy, absolutely crazy that's what's going on. But nonetheless, that's really what is that investment protection that we're talking about on IBMI. So as we head down this path towards making IBMI normal, let's take a look at why. Why are we doing this? Why just not leave the system alone and let people run and do their thing on it and not force them to change? Well, one of the reasons that we've invested in continuing to push this forward is some of these concepts, right? Security. IBMI is one, if not the most securable system in the industry, right? We have the ability to secure your system from the very lowest components of the operating system. I mean, it's really from the very fiber of the machine, securable. I mean, that's really about what IBMI is all about. Of course, we have many customers that don't follow best practices, and yeah, they're not necessarily very secure, but that's their choice. We have continued to then build and invest in this security by allowing you to not just be object-based security, but now we can also do things like data level security with things like ARCAD. We've provided technology with some of the auditing capabilities and changed the games completely, right? For years, auditing has all been done with audit journals, which great, fantastic way of doing it. But what if there's a better, faster way with generated columns and temporal tables? You can have the ability, using a simple SQL statement, to find out real time who, what, when, and where a change to your database table came from. I mean, things like that can be truly game-changing as to learning out what's going on with your system and your data. And then authority collection is another huge component of our latest releases, letting you get the information on what's going on your machine. Now, one of the other reasons that we've invested in moving to normal is this whole idea of reliability. If you look at IBMI, it just runs. That's been the core mantra of the IBMI for years and years. It's a highly stable platform, and it just works. And our customers have to come to depend upon that. Of course, let's take that one step further, right? What we've done with IBMI is we've also added our new active-active database, our DB2 mirror. So not only have we said, hey, we know we're already reliable, but let's take it one step further. Let's take it and make it truly continuously available. And now we have the ability to have an active-active database. So really excited about what that brings to cost. And then, the other thing that often is truly misunderstood, not known, of course, IBM does a terrible job of talking about this as well, is, the whole total cost of ownership. When you start pulling together the actual costs of hardware, software, maintenance, people, all of those things to run your business, that we've had studies that have gone and looked at this and have shown that, it can be anywhere from 20 to 60% lower cost of ownership. And that's just something that gets lost in the conversation. And then, of course, our investment protection capabilities that we have in the box. Applications just work upgrade after upgrade. OS or hardware, you can update them, change them, and we continue to move forward. You look at our core applications like RPG, COBOL, CL. I mean, those applications, they never go out of style. They're continuing to be the core of our customers' business. And the good news is we have the ability to reimagine those with talent for today so that they can continue to be the core and continue to be part of that investment protection conversation. Now, if we look at our integration proposition on IBMI, that's one of the things that is, unprecedented with any other platform. Is our goal is to have everything you need to run your business applications are all part of the operating system, right? We build in security, we build in auditing and output, file serving, REST APIs and web services and subsystems and on, OLAP type capabilities and your database, networking. It's all built in. It's all part of the integrated proposition of IBMI. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes now diving into a couple different areas within the conversation of normal development. Spend just a minute on some languages, tools, connectivity, developers, methodologies. These are all a couple of topics that are, I think, incredibly important to make certain that we understand, and also to help you see what we've been focusing on from our side here in the development lab. If you think about, languages, I mean, if you go back a few years ago, we had Java, COBOL, RPG, CL, C, C++. And in today's world, right, we have all of those. But now we also have languages like Python, Node.js, PHP, R, and many other open frameworks that are now part of the conversation. So you can do an awful lot of things on IBMI that become interesting. But of course, I really want to start with the lifeblood of the system, right? What is RPG, right? And ask a simple question: is RPG a modern language? Well, certainly RPG in its inception was a modern language. When it was created, it was modern for that day. It was built such to make it easy to enter code when entering your line code on a punch card. So yeah, it was modern then. The modern methodology at the time RPG was created was really the concept of monolithic, being able to have your UI, your business logic, and your data layer all tightly tied together in one program made sense at that era. Well, we've radically changed how we think about RPG. I personally don't like to talk about RPG or freeform RPG. I much prefer to talk about the concept of modern RPG, because modern RPG is more than just freeform. Yeah, we've been doing freeform or aspects of freeform for years and years and years, but it wasn't until about 7 years ago that we actually moved RPG to be basically fully freeform. And then we also went and removed the need to have any of the columns capable leveraged. You can now use columns 1 through 3090. I mean, how far you want to go to the right is your choice. You can have it as wide as you want. It's more about who are the developers that we're targeting, right? Today's developers. What are the interfaces that we're targeting for them to use to write code? Not a punch card. It would be a modern IDE. We're also, especially with ILE concepts built into the operating system, it really lends itself beautifully for a microservices-based architecture, all doing that within the constructs of RPG. And so modern RPG is really about leveraging pieces of things like freeform, as well as being able to leverage the true modularity that's available with an ILE so that you can leverage things like services and become a microservices-based architecture. So it's really about and leveraging today's talent to do that. So if we look at what we've done with the language, right, we've removed all of the stylistic limitations of the punch card. We're truly able to have self-documenting code today with an RPG, and that's a huge aspect. I mean, no need to have code that's not readable by humans. Let's make code that's easily understood. We continue to work on our integration. We have integration with SQL and XML, JSON, all into the RPG language. We've added things recently like overloading. So I can have multiple methods with the same name, differentiated by their signature. Geez, sounds like that's something you can do in many languages. So you can do those things in RPG today too. So we continue to push RPG down the path so that when you do get a Java developer, they can quickly and become successful with RPG, really in a matter of hours or days, not months and years. We've done some tests. I'm sure you talked to Philippe and the ARCAD guys. They've done similar things. I can take a kid fresh out of college and I can put up some RPG code that was written in the older style and ask them to tell me what's going on in that program, and they're going to have nothing, zero, nada. It makes no sense to them. Heck, I own RPG. It doesn't make any sense to me either. But if I put up a modern RPG program and ask them to tell me kind of what's going on, oh, sure, they won't be able to understand everything, but I'll guess they'll probably be able to figure out about 80–85% of it with zero knowledge of RPG. And so now they just have to learn just a little bit along the way. So let's talk for a minute about, is RPG still relevant? Doesn't matter. And I like to talk about what is the best tool for the job. No, if I was going to create a user interface, I certainly would not use RPG. The green screen is not an interface. It's not. But is RPG a modern language? Well, absolutely, if you want it to be. But that's really more about your choice rather than the restrictions of the language. Now, I think it was Michelle was talking about some of the sign-on conversions, right? Do people want to move away from RPG and move to Java? Is that the right choice, right? Well, let's just explore that for just a minute, because I think there's a couple things that might be interesting in that, right? Could you use another language like Java to replace everything you're doing in your business code today? Absolutely, you sure could. But at what cost? There will be a performance penalty. There will be a significant cost in your code investment protection, no question. If you look at RPG, the way RPG is designed, because it's a truly integrated language, it's incredibly small, incredibly thin on the resources it requires to do processing. Performance, integration of data, code protection is unprecedented if you leverage things like modern RPG. It's an incredibly important concept to keep in mind. Now, as we continue to move forward down the line, we talk about things like DevOps and other things that are going on in the industry today, right? With IBMI, we've been focused on that as well. Being able to leverage Git as your source control repository. It's not just for open source technology and open source based containers. It is truly available today for doing RPG or COBOL. We've been working on changing part of the operating system side of things, where do you compile your RPG or your COBOL or your CL? Where's your source code have to reside? For years, it was in source physical files. Well, that's no longer the case. Yeah, you can still do that there, but now I can also use a source file that's located in IFS, which makes leveraging technologies like Git significantly easier. Now, we also deal with things like Jenkins and Jira and things like that are important as part of that DevOps conversation, as well as things like Urban Code and Ansible. Ansible has been a significant push for us over the past probably 6-7 months now. And part of that has to do with what's going on in the world of IBMI and cloud infrastructure. Mark was talking about, the concept of both infrastructure as well as your application developments and combining those two things together. And that is very much something we're seeing and is part of really the benefit and values that need to be adopted if you're going to be successful with IBMI in a cloud type environment. And we look at things like OpenShift, allowing you to leverage and create these new methodologies in a cloud world, comparing those with Ansible, allowing you to build your environment, and then leveraging the stuff that ARCAD's talking about with their integration into Ansible so that you can use playbooks to then not only build the infrastructure, but extend that out and build the applications that are going to be part of that infrastructure. That's an incredibly important concept and incredibly important what we're talking about as we move forward with this new DevOps world. My teams here in the development lab have been working on creating some playbooks and infrastructure into Ansible to allow you to, build things easily on maybe a Node.js container or put Node.js on the box or Python on the machine and set up a chroot, and maybe it's loading some other things. And then now with the capabilities that ARCAD's bringing to the table, we have the ability to extend that to also add your traditional RPG programs, databases, and other things that are all part of that key application conversation. I put this next slide in, and I put it in just minutes ago when Michelle was talking about moving to RPG. Just throw it in there because I find it a fascinating conversation, right? Who owns RPG? Who owns Java? What's the level of integration of the language? How do you access the database? How do you do parsing of modern data structures, right? Are you forward, backward, compatible? What is the future of the language? I mean, if you think about RPG, I can definitively answer all of those questions and answer them very well. I mean, we have a great future with RPG. It's high performing, right? It's tightly integrated. There's a lot of very interesting answers that are part of RPG. And if you look at the world of Java, I don't know that you can answer all those questions today definitively, depending on what's going on in the industry with some of those. Anyways, food for thought about what you want to consider part of your normal solution. Let's take a second, switch gears, talk about tools for just a few minutes as we continue to look at some of the things that we've been going towards when we talk about normal development. Rational Developer for I is the key modern user interface for developing code on IBMI. It's truly going to be basically the same sort of code that developers have been using outside of the IBMI world. It's going to have an Eclipse-based architecture. So there's a familiarity to them when they step into RDI. We've seen programming shops that have gone from a very old style development with old style RPG into modern RDI with modern development, and they've seen productivity improvements of 20 to 50%. Kind of crazy. When you talk about moving into a modern normal code, right, we've added rename refactoring into RDI. Because while you can easily take and move your code from fixed form to free form using the great tools that ARCAD provides for doing that, your names of the variables are still just as ugly. If you think, depending on when you started writing your code, it could be 6 characters long. And you need a secret decoder ring to understand what that variable really means. Well, with rename refactoring, you can very easily go in, right-click on a single variable, rename it, and we will then populate that through the entire code based on its context. So it's not a scan and replace. It's truly a find in context and update that name, allowing you to create self-documenting code very easily, very quickly. Now, the next step that we've added into RDI is we've recently, in our newest version, 9607, we've allowed you to do refactor and extract procedure, where I can highlight a section of code that might be used many places, and I can make that into a procedure. By highlighting it and then doing extract procedure, we'll go ahead and create a new procedure for you and then replace that code in line with the call to that procedure. So again, just helping our RPG developers figure out how to easily have the tools at their fingertips to start that process of moving towards modular and services-oriented development, all within their tools. And of course, we have tight integration within RDI to things like Git and many other source control repositories. That's all a key focus item for us as well. The world of blueprints, one of my favorites is, we talk about, I don't know how many people build applications, work on applications, and don't have a plan, don't have a blueprint. Their blueprint happens to be the guy that sits over in the corner who's been working on it for 15 years, and he forgets things. I'm sorry, but he does. I know you'd never go build a house, you'd never go modify a house if you didn't actually have a blueprint. This blueprint here is actually from my house. When my youngest son was born 15 years ago, we realized we were short 1 bedroom. So we decided to add on, and so we added on, and this is the blueprint, because we couldn't get a permit. We wouldn't wanted to have started the process without actually having a document of understanding. And that's so key and so important with our coding as well. Not having a clue on your data maps and your calling chains and your field understanding and your database diagrams and your physical and logical file usage, how can you make changes to these things without that level of understanding? And of course, Observer is the tool that we've partnered with from an IBMI perspective to help us on that path. We talk about examples of people who have done this and have done this successfully. I could have pulled in any one of a number of great examples that the team from ARCAD has put together, but I figured you'll probably see enough of those. So let's go with something that I found out here recently from IBM Systems Magazine. There's a article that was written just late last year that talks about how to recruit developers who can easily learn modern RPG and help modernize the rest of your shop. It's a great conversation about exactly what we're talking about, leveraging a Java developer, leveraging a Python developer, and why leveraging talent of that nature can actually be incredibly beneficial to your RPG development team if you're willing to leverage the right modern development techniques. All right, I'm going to radically switch gears here for a minute, because one of the major changes that we've done from when we talk about moving to the world of normal on IBMI is really our work around the language of SQL. When we think about SQL, we think about SQL as the language of the database. I think That's pretty fair statement. We've been using SQL as a database language for many, many years now. If you think about developers that are in college, almost everybody understands SQL, so it's become a normal language of data access. Well, on IBMI, we've decided that just the database was a little bit too restrictive, because SQL is really a language about data. Sure, a database is going to have a lot of data, but why restrict it only to that particular type of data? Let's expand that a little bit, and I think we could probably leverage it for some other things. And so we've been on a strategic path for the last probably about 5 years now to create what we call IBMI services. An IBMI service is really conceptually no different than a REST API. The only difference is, as opposed to using the HTTP protocol as our data bus, we're actually leveraging the SQL-based data buses, whether that's you could use ODBC, you could use JDBC, or you can do it on IBMI very natively. It actually can be an incredible game changer, because the SQL engine, the SQE engine on IBMI is fantastic and actually unprecedented in its ability to parse, filter, and sort data. So if you think about what we've been doing for accessing more native information on the platform for the past 30 years, it's been largely CL programs, it's been system APIs. And what do? You call those interfaces, and what do they return to you? Data. What do you have to do with that data? You need to then go write code to sort and filter and find what you're looking for, or you can look at it visually and try to find it yourself. Not very effective. With SQL, you now have the ability to very easily, in a single statement, combine that sorting, filtering capabilities to allow you to find things much faster, and in some cases, find things that you would never be able to find with previous technology. So we've really focused on, looking at different areas of the system, whether it's security, jobs, IFS. Excuse me. That's actually an area that we've really delivered some interesting services in recently. Have you ever wanted to go find the largest file in your IFS? I bet you can't do that very easily today. With the SQL services that we put together for IBMI, now I can write one simple SQL statement, and in a matter of seconds, I can find out who has created the largest file and what that largest file is on my IFS. It's a game changer. So the whole shift from being able to do things with CL or system APIs to being able to leverage the power of SQL to revolutionarily change how you get after your data, and allow you to really think about things in new and different ways is, I think, a game changer, and not just for application development, but also for systems management. There's a lot of very powerful things you can do. One simple example that I threw in here, if I want to get some information about a user profile, in the past, I'd have to call one of the user profile APIs. If I wanted to find out if a password was going to expire in the next week, and I'd have to write about a program that's probably about 50 lines of code long to get to the information. With SQL services, I can write one simple SQL statement, and I can get the results in a matter of seconds. Really quite a different way of doing things. Now, if you're an experienced SQL programmer, you might go, oh, okay, this sounds pretty cool. I think I can do this. If you're somebody who really doesn't have a lot of experience with SQL, you might be going, oh, this is kind of cool, but I don't care. I'm never going to use it because I really don't know SQL. Well, we've been really focused on removing that excuse as well. And if you look at our IBMI Access Client Solutions tool, our ACS support that we've provided for your accessing your IBMI, we have a Run SQL scripts interface built into there. And in that Run SQL scripts interface, we have something called Insert from Examples. And we have provided a working, usable example for every IBMI service we've delivered. So you don't need to know SQL to actually use these. Matter of fact, that example that I have on the top of the screen is one of the examples that is from our Insert from Examples. So I don't need to be an SQL programmer to be able to leverage this SQL. I can go use what we've provided for you. You might be able to then start the process of learning and modifying to take it to new and different levels as you walk down this continuum. So an incredibly important and really dramatic change in how we talk about data on IBMI and how you might leverage and access and find out information about your IBMI or your applications, because now you have access to data in very new and different ways. One of the recent updates that we added was we now have the ability to add, remove, update, manage entries on data queues, all with SQL. Why was that important? If you think about our open source technologies that we've provided, if I have an application, well, let's say I have a Python application, it may be running on I, it might be running on another box, doesn't really matter. But I have a data queue that I need to put a request on to get it processed. How do I do it? Well, now I can quickly, very easily make that conversation normalized for my Python developer. They have to write a very simple SQL statement calling our SQL service, and now they have interaction to the data queue. They don't need to go learn some system API and figure out how the heck they're going to call it from Python. Changes the game. All about continuing to move the development on our platform towards the world of normal. The last topic I'm going to cover when we talk about our world of normal is REST. REST connections are an incredibly normal vehicle for doing data exchange in today's industry. And it has been growing more and more over the past 3-4 years. IBMI has a REST engine integrated into the operating system. We have the ability to very easily create REST APIs over your existing ILE programs and service programs. That support's been there for years. The very first version of our integrated web services server that went out was in 2007. It was strictly SOAP-based. Since that time, we've reinvented this support multiple times because this world changes constantly. And in June of last year, we added a new feature to this support, which I think is a game changer. Now, I've talked about in the last slide about leveraging SQL to get at and manage system information, which is fantastic. But it requires a database connection, right? ODBC, JDBC, okay, fine. What if I don't want to open up or manage that connection externally? Not a problem. You can now take and use the HTTP REST connection, and I can have a developer use only REST, and I can take and create well-formed RPG statements and integrate them into the REST API engine on IBMI. So now I can do REST for data access as well as calling an ILE program. You have options. You have abilities to do things in a very interesting and normal manner. This becomes interesting because now I don't have to have rogue SQL running on my machine. I can have a much better level of control about who's doing what and what they're doing. Now, in conclusion, what is the world of normal? Your world of normal can be lots of different things. We talk about modern RPG and Git and SQL and PHP and REST APIs and RDI and language R, and there is so much that we continue to add, but the key to this to understand is that IBMI is very normal, and we're continuing to move this platform down that path as we look at what's going on in the industry to ensure that we are able to stay normal and we're able to leverage the right technologies at the right time for what's going on today. If I was thinking, I would have put Ansible on this chart, because I knew we were doing, and we're doing all sorts of things with Ansible as well, because now with the support that was just talked about, you're another step towards using the tools of today to be able to be successful. So hopefully that was helpful to understand, where we're going and what we're doing. I thank you for listening to me while I sit over here in Rochester, Minnesota. It's quite exciting that we can still make this successfully happen. I hope you have rest of your conference goes quite well, and I do wish I was able to be there. Thank you.